Hi, thanks for watching. This is some highlights from our online sessions that I call the Inner Sanctum online sessions. And I edit out about 40 minutes from our teachers free for you to watch, because people that join our online sessions, it is a paid service. It is part of the way I make a living and help other teachers promote their work. So if you'd like to join the online Inner Sanctum group sessions, we have a guest teacher once a month, and I teach once or twice a month deliberate creation and energy exercises and how to tap into your intuition and how to be more psychic and all that good stuff. Please sign up on the website Swain/Inner Sanctum. So I hope you join us if you're somebody that wants to make a difference in this world and feel like you've got something to share and you'd like a little support team and meet other teachers and meet some of the guests I have on the show, hear wonderful stories and wonderful teachings. So enjoy the highlights. Hello and welcome to the Inner Sanctum with guest teacher Blair Styra. It's so fabulous to have you as our teacher, Blair.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. So, and hello everybody. Yes, all over the world. Hello everybody.
I know we've got people from all over the world. We've got Germany, Norway, predominantly the States, Australia, New Zealand. So you're the only one in New Zealand at the moment. And yeah, it's a fabulous group of people. The cat's chiming in. So Blair, do you want to give us a little, just a sort of snippet of your story, how you met Tabash, and then we'll just let the conversation unfold as it does. And people can ask questions because you're both brilliant teachers. And take it away, Blair.
Well, I'm a channel for a spirit called Tabash. I've been channeling spirit for over 30 years in New Zealand, but all over the world now. I've written a couple of books, Don't Change the Channel and Who Catharted. Those are my two books. I've done a lot of seminars on all sorts of different things all over the place. I started channeling spirit in my mid-20s. And as I've written in my first book about a sort of bit of background when I was a child, I always knew that there was something more. I always had this feeling that there was so much more to life than what we were experiencing. And I was born in Canada and spent the first 11 years of my life before we came to New Zealand. And where we lived, there was this big forest, which I used to wander around. And I would find these extraordinary places, which now I know I was probably just stepping into little portals of energy. And because every time I went back to that place to find it again, I could never find it. It just sort of disappeared. It was like it was there for that particular moment. And I felt really protected by the energy of nature and felt like I was communicating with something greater within myself. Also, there was up the end of a big long road that led up into the mountains, this cemetery. And I was completely and absolutely fascinated by death. And so we're talking about 1960s here. So whenever there was a funeral cortege, I would hide behind a hedge and watch as the funeral cortege would go by. And in my 6-year-old mind, in the hope that I would see a body. And of course, you know, it was just something within my energy that I knew that death was something that was life. And anyway, and after the funeral would go away and I'd go and stand by the grave and I would just stand there and stare and stare and stare, like I was trying to remember something. And there was this little place in the cemetery. It was a hill and had these 3 pine trees on it. And I would sit there and I would cry because I was remembering something that I had missed, that was no longer a part of my life. And of course, now I realize that I was remembering spirit. I was remembering higher consciousness. And so while I was there, I could see it in my mind's eye. It was this vastness of light. And it's really interesting because even now, today, if I find a place that looks even slightly like that, it automatically takes me back. We came to New Zealand in 1971, and I simply just got on with growing up and, you know, doing all the puberty things and that sort of stuff. And then when I was 18 years old, I met the woman who became my wife. So a bit of an interesting background there, because she was actually older than me. She was 24 years older than me. So we had an affair when I was 18 and she was 42. So we were sort of the scandal of the neighborhood. And anyway, in the end, we actually end up setting up home together. And so right from the beginning, it's like I was completely thrown into this adult world, and which is also part of my development in this lifetime, obviously, to do so. In my 20s, Kay, my wife, she's diagnosed with breast cancer. And at the time, it wasn't a very good prognosis. So we just started looking at life after death stuff, reading, meditation, that sort of thing. And we became so focused on that we really sort of almost forgot she was sick. And she survived that, even though it was, as the doctor said, the worst it could possibly have been. She survived that. And it just completely changed my direction. So that was a catalyst for my spiritual growth. And so I just carried on with my meditations and reading, and things started unfolding as people came into my life who opened up doors for me. The synchronicity presented itself to me. And then I met up with a woman who was a channel, and I went to one of her seminars, and the spirit who she spoke through was Isis, actually. So Isis was in the body, and we're all sitting in the audience, staring and watching and listening, and I was fascinated by this. And then Isis suddenly stopped and stared into the audience, and then pointed and said, "You are a channel." And I thought she was talking about the dude behind me. So I'm like, "Oh, well, that's cool, you know, blah, blah, blah." And then she goes, "No, you, like this, you see." And I realized she was looking at me, and I was completely mortified. So my head was down, and I was so embarrassed. Everyone was staring at me. Anyway, I ended up doing her workshops, and that's how I came to be connected with Tabash, because she told me that I had this channel, or the spirit called Tabash, who wanted to work with me. And right from the very beginning, it just seemed the most natural thing to do. And over the years, people have said to me, "Oh, you know, weren't you frightened about, you know, this happening and questioning it?" And I said, "Well, no, because when I thought about it, it felt like I knew what was happening. And I knew that I'd made this agreement. And so gradually I started to make alignment with Tabash just in my thoughts. And then gradually, as my physiology and mental energies became a lot more aligned and attuned to him, then I started to experience him more. So then I could see him in my mind's eye. And then in my meditations, I found I was able to go out of my body and connect with him in a literal sense. And then one conversation we had, you know, he started talking about all the work that we could be doing together. And again, it just felt the most natural thing for me to do. So I made the agreement with him, and then things unfolded. And as it unfolded, I just kept working probably for about a year, quite solidly in my meditations and stuff, until invariably Spirit said, "Look, we want to do a public meeting. We're going to go public with this." So I hired a hall, and I had no idea how many people were going to come, whether it was going to be 5 people or whatever. And in the end, 100 people came. And so Tabash came through, did a really amazing teaching. And then it was like the cork was pulled. And from there on, we just started doing a lot of public work. And then gradually I started doing personal sessions. And so, you know, 30 whatever years later, you know, we're still doing what we're doing.
Here we are.
Yeah.
30 years later. You know, a lot of the questions that I get in the Inner Sanctum is, how do I meet my spirit guides? And the question that is arising as I listen to your story, Blair, is how do we work with our spirit guides to, you know, change this world, or at least change ourselves, and then to sort of have it more, like a real thing, not just...
Yes, yeah. Look, I think when you say that, I think of the word awareness. And, you know, from my understanding, you know, we're gods in bodies. So therefore, we right now possess all the alignments, all the connections with Source in every way possible. So the moment we wake up, we basically align ourselves, you know, with that vibration, with that energy. I think if we treat it in a very practical way, it becomes a lot easier. And I've realized that over all the years that I've been doing this, Tabash says, listen to the way life talks to you every day. And it gives you signals and signs in all sorts of different ways. In like a song on a radio, or something you read, or an overhearing of a conversation, or, okay, as an example, I'll give you this. So my wife now lives in a care home because she has Alzheimer's. And so I was driving up there one day to visit her. It's been a long journey. I mean, in total, it's been about 12 years. And she's been in care for just over 3 years. So as I drive up, see her every day, and I was just feeling a bit flat about it. I was thinking, oh, this is going on for too long. So I started to feel a bit flat. Anyway, I just casually glanced up as I was driving. I could see this building with a billboard on it. And on the billboard was a sign that said, lighten up. And I just burst out laughing because I knew straight away, okay, got it. Yep. Spirit's telling me, this is the story. Anyway, so when I was coming home, I looked up and the sign wasn't there. Now, this is interesting. It might have still been there, but I didn't need to see it anymore because I'd already got the message. And so this is something I've realized, is that we don't have to store up the information or store up the guides. It's there when we need it. It gets presented to us when it's necessary. And when it's not anymore, then it's not that it's not there, but we don't have the alignment more with it. And so in regards to aligning to our spiritual energies, our guides, friends, whatever, it's just always there. And it really is a simple matter of developing, I suppose, a day-to-day relationship with what you believe is essential for you on that day. And so what I do, when I wake up in the morning, well, there's two things. First of all, I always put the thought out to my higher self. So I just say, good morning, higher self. And then I say to higher self, well, higher self, how can I be God more today? And it will always give me an answer. Like this morning, it just said, be aware. So as I've gone through the day, I've just, in my thoughts, saying, I'm God, being aware that I'm God more, that sort of stuff. Other times it might say something completely different. And then what I usually do is I just throw the greeting out to source. And I usually say something like, g'day guys, how you doing? Doors open, do your thing. It's as simple as that. I don't have to do it in a big meditation or sit at the bed and do a prayer or something like that. I treat it like it's an everyday way. And I could just feel them with me through the day. And it's like having someone with you. And sometimes I'll throw out, oh, I'm just going to do this. What do you think? Or I'll literally get a sense of go and do this, or sit down there, or don't do that, or whatever. And it's like someone's telling you something, but it's not like a voice. It's just like this knowingness that comes through.
Absolutely. That's such a great point, that everything is your guidance that's talking to you. Everything.
Yeah.
And I think that where a lot of people get lost is they see people like you who, have this relationship with Tabash, and they see people like me who has this relationship with what I call my mob, or a prettier name is blissful beings. And, we have this, well, I do anyway, this constant communication in my head. But when I was younger, I would look for signs everywhere. And it still happens today. I don't have to have that constant rapport happening in my head. It can be, I was drinking a cup of dandelion sort of tea or coffee, and I looked at the residue in the cup, and it looked like angel wings, and there was like a message in the bottom of the cup. And just, it can be everywhere. Like if you think that everything is talking to you, everything is energy, and spirit is in everything, or consciousness is in everything. Your car, your computer, a magazine, your cup of tea, everything, road signs can talk to you. So that's a great.
And the thing that's interesting is that as you become more aligned and more peaceful, accepting of who you are, and are really peaceful with that, it actually becomes really easy to recognize what's being presented to you, and you'll never be presented with any more than you can actually cope with. So we're never sort of hoisted with a whole lot of stuff. And I always find it interesting when people consult with Tabash or ask him a question. One of the questions people say to him is what is the purpose of my existence? What is the meaning of my life? Or what's the rest of my life going to be like? And Tabash always looks at them and go, well, it's more, It's enough to know what the rest of the day is going to be, let alone the rest of your life. You know, why do you want to put that sort of pressure on yourself? And then this is what we do. We put so much pressure on ourselves by, oh, I need to know what the rest of my life is going to be, or whatever. And so, and that's one thing I've realized is, you know, how important it is to be very, very present. Because in the present, it's easy to recognize, oh, this is what I'm dealing with. This is where I'm standing. I mean, we're all listening to each other today and talking, and we're not thinking about, you know, what we're having for dinner or having another conversation on a phone or something. So we have to know when to be focused. And I think in regards to our relationship with Source, with guides, we get a sense of what seems essential to focus on. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean we'll get it through spirituality. You know, we will get it through the road signs and the people we have conversations. We get it through life, basically. We get guidance through life. And when we realize that as gods, we're just all of life, then of course we get guidance from ourselves all of the time. You know, through our belief systems, through our inner instincts. You know, our soul self is telling us something all the time. And here's something that's interesting. And this is something Tabash was teaching recently at a meeting. And someone said, how many past lives are we all apt to have on Earth? And his reply was fascinating. He said, well, you only ever had one lifetime, but you just do it in lots of bodies. And he says, if you can imagine that right now you're at the front of the line of a very long line of people that you've lived. And when you look behind you, you can see trailing off into history. Now, he said something fascinating. He said, what's happening now is that, and this is for so many people, is that when you look behind you, you don't actually see anything anymore. And the reason is because everything now is inside of you. So all of that is now within you. And therefore, what's occurring, and this is very representative of the energy of 2020, he says what people are now doing is that they're basically just channeling those selves that they've been. So they call upon some aspect of themselves, some intelligence, some capability, whatever. So every day we're just channeling different parts of ourselves all the time. So when you look at our physiology and our personalities, that's just, well, the physical is what we are now, but the internal energy is made up of all of that information. So it makes sense that we can actually start accessing that. I'm just going to go to the part of me that was highly successful in business, or I'll go to the part of me that knew how to get my relationships really right, and I'll go to the part of me that's really confident, or the part of me that knows how to make money, and the part of me that's always healthy. And this is what people are learning to do. You're able to bring through this information, but it's not just the information, it's the vibration of that situation that actually is really how it works. Because all of that is still happening. So all our successes and powers and all that, it's still actually happening. So the vibration of that is something that we have access to all of the time. So as we're bringing through this information, what this does, it automatically aligns us with specific other frequencies, which is what we call our guides. So basically what they're doing is that as we bring forth this particular frequency, they are part of the formula that allows the energy to basically present us with the best deal. And so it helps to guide and mentor and direct. So it's really like molding frequencies. And as you mold the frequencies, and invariably you end up getting the result that you want. But to get the result, of course, you have to pay attention to who you are as a source of power, and not externalize anything. Not you know, even, you know, Tabash said, I think we may have mentioned this and when we talked to you last time, Karen, which was never ask God for an answer. Never ask your guides for an answer, because they can't give you one. What they do is if you ask them for energy, if you ask for power, if you ask for insight, then they have plenty of that. But as you know, it's taught, we are the answer, so we create the answer. So guidance is guidance, mentoring is mentoring, you know, and we have to realize now that we're the ones with all the power. We're the ones with all the answers. We're the ones who are going to make it all happen. So life is not something that's happening to us. Life is something that we are making happen through the way we think, through the way we feel, through the way we drive, you know, in every respect, how we present ourselves, basically. And so, of course, now, when we look at the energy of 2020, it's a year of massive balance and massive power. So for those of us who've been on our self-development road for such a long time, we are in that position to be able to channel through whatever we choose and to make what we want happen. And it's actually quite practical, and I think it's a very common sense thing. I don't think we necessarily have to go into deeply meaningful meditations and stuff like that all the time. I think you literally make life a constant meditation because you're simply aligned to source all the time. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to unmute everybody and just throw it open to like questions. That's the thing about guidance. I think that a lot of people think that there is this spirit guide or higher self that's telling you what to do and you've got to receive those answers. And that's so not what guidance is. Like, guides never tell you what to do, because exactly what you say, Blair, you are the creator of your experience. You are the choice maker. You are the decision maker. So they can only guide you in making a decision, but they won't say, yeah, pick that one. They'll just guide you. So it kind of is frustrating when you sort of reach out and you don't receive answers, but they won't give you answers like, tell me what to do, which way should I go? It's like, what do you want to do? Which way do you think you should go? What feels better? It's like, they're not going to tell you what to do. And it's because they're, like all great teachers, they're empowering you. They're not taking your power away from yourself. But has anyone got any questions?
And I think of something to us teachers, which is we all get to a point, and this is not just people, but even countries, where you outgrow what was. So when you outgrow something, you no longer play that role anymore. And okay, you can redevelop, therefore you can learn how to grow into the new power in different ways. And therefore you have a resurgence of that particular place. But then you get some places where that's finished, that's complete. And you can no longer be aligned to that idea, that vibration, that frequency, that country, whatever. Or that country or whatever doesn't have such influence anymore over anything. And I think this has actually happened right through human history. And you can sort of feel like the energy is moving round and round and round, and then occasionally it will stop. In the past it was like the ancient Mesopotamian Empire. It was ancient Egypt, and even in modern times you could see, for a while it was America, and then it was Russia, and then it was Japan, and it was Germany, it was whatever, it's like the energy is deciding, where are we going to go next? And so of course, as things are being outlaid now, you can literally feel where's the awareness energy going to land? The concept that comes to my mind was every dog has its day. and so there's an awakening, but there's also a shutting down as well. And I think that's also indicative of ourselves as individuals too. So when I was speaking before about all these different selves, I think it's imperative that we shut down certain aspects of ourselves and realize, well, that's no longer relevant to who I am now and what I think now. And that's even aspects that were powerful or successful. And because we have to make way for new power and new success and new happiness. So you have to be able to push away the old happiness. And a lot of people say, oh, I wish I could be happy like I used to be.
Yeah.
But you can't. You have to be happy in a new way. And I think that's the same with the way countries are developing. And it's interesting about different countries in the world. I think there's so much spirituality that is going through every country now that it's impossible to push that sort of energy aside. And the energy is just building and building and building, which from my observations, it means that each country is now moving into, let's call it its authentic place. And each country has a specific key of authenticity to experience and to achieve. And I think, if you look at countries that have experienced a lot of conflict, for instance, there's obviously, major karma that has had to be worked through within those countries, within the people of those countries as such. But as the new generations are being born, then of course you're no longer influenced by the energy of conflict in the same way, the old frequencies in the same way, the old draconian methodology. So new generations who are being born come with the lights turned on. So therefore, as the lights get turned on, then it just pushes the darkness out more and more. And you see this. It's like the dying out of the old ways, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is it, isn't it? It's like when you are able to step back, and as I'll put it in the way I use the word, and be God, observing the experience, then you're able to, as God, direct the human nature. It's rather like saying, hey, human nature, it's me, God, speaking. Could you do this now, please? Could you do that now, please? And having those sorts of conversations. And it's a bit like stepping way out back and going, oh, wow, look what Norway's doing. And it makes you realize that, we can have a very powerful influence on everything by our thinking, by our feelings, by our attitudes. And we actually have to just treat that as a fact, because so many people still think, oh, well, I have no say in this. What's the point of having an opinion and all that sort of stuff? But of course, everything, as we all know, that we think and feel and do matters to everything that happens. And I think people are getting that more and more all of the time. And it's going to be fascinating over the next 10 years, because, when I look at things politically, sociologically, etc., this new wave of leaders are coming in, and they have a much more openness to feeling the bigger picture, seeing the bigger picture, experiencing the bigger picture. And by doing that, it's changing collective consciousness. And something I find in my observations of what's going on the planet is, we're so focused for such a long time on the global family, and all countries sort of pulling in and doing everything that they could, etc. But what I'm noting is that there's becoming this level of separateness that's occurring again, as countries start looking after themselves. And so what you look at, with Britain pulling away from the ECU, and even Australia, making new rules and things, a lot of different immigration rules, within the countries. America, under Donald Trump, has done an awful lot of pulling away from some of the funding. And therefore, it's been fascinating watching the American economy go up. But in that separateness, it's making, what Cecil was saying, it's making people aware of being able to observe from the bigger picture, but observing from a higher perspective, as opposed to just the intellectual perspective, just the financial perspective, but seeing the bigger picture. Therefore, understanding, it's really like going back to basics in lots of ways. And as we go back to basics, then the governments that have been running things, they're on shaky ground, because they're living in the old rules, in the old systems, in the old attitudes, or they're living in their head and they're not living through their feelings. And I think that we have to live through our feelings. We have to lead through our feelings, and I'm talking, about governments and stuff like that. You've got to bring feeling into this. And I remember when last year, you may be familiar with, they had a big mosque shooting in Christchurch, where a lot of people were murdered. And our Prime Minister, she automatically just went straight away, just down there, and she was hands-on. She was embracing everybody and loving everyone. She approached it completely from feeling. And within 2 weeks, she changed the gun laws.
Wow. Your Prime Minister is awesome.
Yeah.
He's just awesome.
So there was no debate. It was just, this is what's going to happen. And so that's the sort of type of person that needs to be leading countries. But then
Absolutely.
That's what we have to be to lead ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, by being that, we're adding to what the country is.
Like one of the things you were saying is, showing up in the moment, knowing that, like Cecil was saying, showing up in the moment, knowing that you have everything that you need in the moment. That's one of the most important things I learned as a young healer, psychic, whatever, is that, you know, when I was in my 30s and I was doing all manner of healing courses and psychic development courses and trying to learn what I already knew, which I found was really interesting, you know, you think you have to, like the normal education system is that you learn something and then you have to remember it. And so we get so caught up with remembering it. Do I get it right? Will I get it right? Is this right? And when I realized that I can just show up and I have everything I need in that moment to help me help somebody else, that was the most freeing thing that could ever happen to me. I did not have to remember anything, that I could just tap into the brilliance of the universe, and everything that would be needed in that moment would be there. And we took it one step further with Penny Kelly in the last show. She was talking about abundance. When you know that you have everything you need in the moment that you need it, you understand you don't have to work hard and save money and put it away for a rainy day. And this whole concept that we're entrenched in the third dimension is, you know, accumulate, save, accumulate, store. I might need it for later, you know, save for your future. It kind of all goes out the window, right? When you come into this new energy of I can create what I need in the moment that I need it instantly. It just
I think in the past it's that whole concept of I need to be secure. And
secure.
so therefore, by, you know, having that amount in the bank and having that interest and having that whatever, you know, that makes me secure. And I'm not saying, you know, one can't do that, but I think it's also about you find your first security within the way you think, the way you feel, the way you live, the way that you're living your day. How am I secure for this day? And because that's what we're living. And if you create a precedence in regards to living in such a way, then, you know, I suppose this is where the law of attraction comes in, because you create that energy around you, and then it makes sense that you're just going to pull more and more of that towards you. However, saying that, you know, it's not just flinging open all the doors and making it a random act. I think it's important to know that we need structure, and that you know, I think it was John Kehoe who said, you know, enlightenment is all very well, but it's useful to know how to make a good omelet. And so you know, we have to have these basic needs and pay attention to these things, you know, because I mean, a lot of people, I have friends who are like this, you're spiritual people who it's like, oh, well, you know, I don't have to really think for myself now because the universe will do it for me. I don't have to, you know, organize things or structure things, etc. And then they can never figure out why their lives are all in one big mayhem. And then, of course, I'm always their go-to person when they have problems. And so it's like, as I said, well, no, yeah, it's good to be God, but you know, you still have to structure things and organize things and be sensible and practical and all that sort of stuff, you know. And you know, but the universe will provide. And I say, yeah, but you're the universe. You have to top up your phone, you know. So,
You have to, yeah, this is very true. Organization of energy. Yeah, we have to be organized, absolutely organized.
yeah. I think I'll talk about the US state of affairs first. It's very easy from a human perspective to become very judgmental of someone's personality, and therefore only focus on the negatives and only focus on what's going wrong and all that sort of thing. And obviously not condoning, you know, people's stupidity, but you know, when we step back and we look at the bigger picture, one's got to remember that, okay, collectively, you know, we've created someone who represents our country, and therefore, you know, I find it interesting in regards to your president, because he's not a politician, he's a businessman. So he's basically running America like it's his business. You're all employees, you know, of him. And I think what he's been set there to do is to reorganize things, and basically, because his whole way is just bulldoze in there. And I think he's bulldozed a lot of stuff that wasn't necessary anymore. And a lot of the old draconian vibrations and energies. And along the road, yeah, upset a lot of people and you know, made a few down as well. But I think it's important because it's very much about the reorganizing, you know, of the country, and the reorganizing of people's attitudes and ideas and you know, their own systems and how they are within themselves. And I think, you know, it's very much about he's not afraid of conflict.
No.
So he's able to actually confront, the issues that are important. And when I'm talking away, I'm getting spirit coming in here and they're saying, the person, and they haven't stepped forward yet,
Mm-hmm.
but the person who's going to pull it all together in the future is actually going to be a woman.
Sorry. but because Yannette's from Canada, so she's got an awesome president, prime minister. I don't know, Justin
Trudeau.
He's just like, he's just.
Let's get on to him and say what I was saying before. When you get this, new breed of leaders, like Canada, for instance, he's this new generation. He's tech savvy. He knows this, that, and he's partied. He's lived. He's not living by the old systems and rules and all those sorts of things. And yet, interesting, isn't it, how even so there's still people who are trying to squash his voice.
Yeah.
But that's the old, the old methods. It's like, oh no, we got to somehow create situations where he's discredited or not heard or whatever.
Are they doing that with your prime minister as well? What's her name?
Jacinda Ardern.
How do you say it? Jacinda
Ardern. Yeah.
Ardern. Is she getting a lot of pushback because she's so, loving and empathetic and?
Not really. I think she's accepted widely. Mm-hmm. New Zealand's in an interesting position because of we're not so connected to everybody else. We're so isolated. Mm-hmm. So from our point of energy, we're not really impacted by what's going on in other places.
Yeah.
She's just able to simply get on and do a job.
Do it. Yeah.
But it's getting back to Justin Trudeau, because I think that, given half the chance, he'd be able to make amazing changes within the economy, within education systems, just seeing that bigger picture, feeling that bigger picture. I think he's brought feeling into, the governments. And I think, it's getting back to what I was saying before about Donald Trump. I think he's brought a feeling in, but he's brought a feeling that's different. Whereas Justin Trudeau's is more personal. It's like he's bringing more personal edge in. And I think from Donald Trump's perspective, it's personal, but more in a sense of making America personal, as opposed to, looking at, as I said before, looking after everybody else. So just cutting cutting it all down. Mm. With the children, answering that question, I just find it absolutely fascinating. I've just become a godfather for the 5th time. So all my mates asked me to be their godparents, and so I've got this little boy called Boston who's like 4 months old. Anyway, and he's cutest little button. Anyway, so his dad consistently sends me videos that he's taking as a doting father, you see. And one day he sent me, he says, bro, you got to look at this. Anyway, so here's Boston. And he's just sort of doing his baby thing, like this, you see. And Brian had sent this to send to his partner. And Brian's going, say hi to mommy, say hi to mommy. So, and there's this little boy, just 4 months old. And then he suddenly goes, hi. Just like that, at 4 months old. And I just I had to replay it about 20 times. I said, did that actually happen? And it did. It wasn't a baby noise or a wind or whatever, as people could say. It was, because you could see him struggling to do it, and then out came this high, just like that. And I just, wow. And as I watched the development of him, it's not just the physiology of it. It is the essence. It's this, what I'm noticing with children, they have this bearing about them where they brought so much more of who they are as God, basically.
Yes.
And when you bring that in, then obviously, you'll note that as a principle, the way that you have to educate children is having to become different. So they're just I know they're just more intelligent. They communicate faster. They develop faster.
They're forcing, I suppose, asking us to be more God too, like more
100%.
coming from the higher perspective and not our ego's perspective.
Yeah.
So, in order to deal with them, you have to come from this place of
Yes.
just unconditional love and tolerance and acceptance and just love. You can't do the sort of like, you drive me crazy, you bloody kids. Okay, like speaking about children and listening to your story and your awakening story. I haven't spoken to like hundreds of people over the years and their awakening stories. What I'm seeing is that it was the diversity, the contrast, the problems that sort of pushed our generation into the spiritual realm. And I think that for the younger generation, that's changing. Like Vladdy will tell you that you come here, you just have a sense of knowing who you are, and then you want to be that, rather than having to go through a cancer diagnosis or a
100%.
Like with me, my dad was beating me up and mum was dying of cancer. Like I had the gamut of contrast that was like hitting me over the head saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. But the kids are not having that. And Sherry will be attested to this, but they're having these problems coping with this like download of psychic ability. She's got a couple of kids that are sort of freaking out because they're just tapped into something that they've not been taught about at school, right? So what would you say to this generation that's like waking up with this powerful awareness?
It just makes me think of something T says, which is, and this is where I think it's important to teach children, that every day when you wake up, you give yourself a chance of life again, mind, body, spirit. So every day of your life, you have a chance, a decision to make. Today, what am I going to think? Today, what am I going to feel? Today, what am I going to be? So I don't believe it's something that we have to work out. I just think it's something that we daily live on our terms, and obviously know that if we have around us people who are supporting us, then we're just guided into that particular way. I think it's just treating it like it's a very normal thing. And it's like when computers first came. When I was in high school in the late 70s, computers were just coming in, but of course there were these giant sort of monitor monsters and stuff like that, and it was a process, and people were sort of freaking out about how to use it and all that sort of stuff. But you just learn, and if you just treat it as a part of life, then gradually you find that some part of you just reaches into that. And I think with young people, that's what they're able to do. They seem to be able to reach into a part of them. And I think what they're needing is perhaps not so much answers to themselves, but more, they know who they are, and they know what they feel, and they know what is. And what they actually need is they need acceptance, they need security, they need love. They just need a really good place to stand in. Hey, everything's cool, everything's fine, I'm here for you, give us a cuddle. Yeah, you can see spirit. Yeah, you can do this. Oh, no big deal. And so it's to treat it like it's normal and every day. And because so many parents and stuff like that, it's like, what's wrong with you? Stop talking to that whatever, stop talking to the wall or whatever, and all parents who just don't get it and understand it. And so I think it is that it's the essence of security on that emotional level that is actually necessary, because I think a lot of these kids know how to work it out for themselves if they find that they're coming at it from a very supportive place. And for those who don't have that supportive place, then okay, I've got to say that from a point of their karma, that's part of their journey to create and to find that supportive place. And so no one is in a wrong or right position. And wherever we stand, that's the place that we want to be in, because that's the place that offers us our opportunity to know ourselves. And I think talking to kids on that level as well, whatever you pay attention to becomes your life. You've got a chance of life today. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to think? What are you going to feel? How do you want it to be? Not, here's the answer to life, memorize it, like you were saying before, Karen, and get on with it. It's like, you don't have to memorize anything. What you do is that, it's Monday. I woke up this morning. You know, these are my feelings. These are my thoughts. These are my energies. How can I organize it? You know, who's around me? Who's there to help me, assist me? You know, and I think it's always there. And I know that it's like these systems that have to be created to help these children. But I think these children create their own systems, you know, within themselves, and find support systems within each other. And, you know, one of the interesting things I'm finding in this is, you know, so we're talking about children with spirituality and stuff like that. But if you look at the acceptance now amongst schools and children in regards to sexuality, for instance, whereas like in my day, you know, when you were at school in the 70s, if, you know, it was, if there was a student who was obviously gay or whatever like that, you know, well, they would have a hard time, you know, and whereas now, you know, it's no big deal. And so it's like this evolution that seems to be occurring. And I think that will happen spiritually as well.
Right. Have we got any other questions? Shall we bring in Tabash? Tabash. The thing about bringing in Tabash is that Blair disappears. He can't hear the conversation, which is kind of sad, I think, because you go elsewhere and you don't hear what we're saying. So it's like having, like I said, it's like having two for the price of one. You know, we get two teachers, but I kind of think it's kind of sad that you don't hang around when Tabash is here.
Yeah, well, that's a choice. I know channels do work differently. Some do hang around and are completely conscious of what's said and experienced. But in my case, I just move into spirit.
I know, he boots you out. He boots you out of the body. Get out.
It gets me. Yeah. So, okay, so I'll bring them through.
All right. Is everyone cool with that?
Yeah, so it won't take long. It takes about probably 20 seconds or so. So, later.
Later. Bye, Blair. Bye.
Bye. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I'll just have some water.
Hello, Tabash. So nice to feel you again.
Nice to feel me again. Be careful how you say that.
Well, I don't know if we're seeing you because we're still seeing Blair's form. So I was going to say, see you again.
Well, you people have a saying, which is, what's in a name? I will say, what's in a body? So, is that? Oh, no.
Can I ask you a question about Blair's wife? Only because I've forgotten her name.
Kay.
Kay, thank you. Because she's so. A lot of my generation have older parents that are in a similar position. Why is the soul choosing to go through, you know, being in a body that doesn't function anymore and a mind that doesn't function anymore? Why does a soul choose that?
Yeah. Well, again, it's a very individual thing.
Yeah.
And so you've got to look at any form of disharmony, distress, disease that anyone goes through. It's all relative to that individual and their lessons. And okay, from Kay's perspective, you know, very fastidious woman, very perfectionist woman, very reserved woman, wouldn't let anyone do anything for her. You know, so this is my way. I have to do it this way. Very, very much like that. So, of course, here she is now where everyone has to do everything for her. So she's having to learn how to let people in, emotionally, physically, mentally, everything. So she's just sort of functioning, basically. And it's interesting because Blair was sharing something with someone the other day, because, of course, she's in a wheelchair and she has to be lifted in a hoist. So here's a woman who is so full of dignity and all that sort of stuff. And Blair walked in, and here she is, sort of hanging there, like some animal in the hoist while the nurses were attending to her. And Blair he actually almost burst out laughing because, you know, the look on Kay's face was that, you know, have I really got to this place? You know, like it was just completely, to him, he just had to turn away and go walk out and laugh, you know. And she was almost like, I'm resigned to the fact that this is my fate, so to speak. And yet, you know, it's like for her to function on another level, she had to learn how to be dysfunctional on other levels. So interesting. You create disability to create ability on other levels. And yet her strength is there, her power is there. I mean, she's only 40 kgs, for goodness sake. She's hardly alive. And yet you can feel the power of her energy and her strength and determination. It's just there. And so, Blair's looked at her and said, why don't you let go? Why don't you let go? Let go. And she sort of looked at him and just sort of went, huh, and just turned the other way. And so, even, when it's not things like dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that, anybody's dis-ease or disharmony, whether you're young or old, is still an opportunity for that soul to experience something so that they can evolve. And it's hard for people to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're speaking, I'm thinking, we're talking about how we're not the mind, we're not the ego, we're not the body, and we are source power. So I suspect that what I'm hearing is that if you take away all those attributes of mind and body, and you're 40 Ks and you're hanging in a hoist, then you really get that you're not any of that. But as you say, there's this huge energy still there, so you are this source power.
Yeah, what a sad thing that we've been talking through the session, where you are everywhere, and Blair can visit her like yesterday, and she was quite lucid, big smile when she saw him, and even though she has no conversation, but she would look at him and smile and maybe touch his face and stuff like this, and yet. The day before, she looked at him like, who are you? And she was like going like this when he went up to give her a hug. So, and it's just frequency. Sometimes she's not even there. It's just, you could just tell when you look in her eyes, it's like her soul's gone somewhere else. But then I know people without Alzheimer's who do this. And so, people come and go all the time, it's choices that people make. People are zoning in and out all the time. And it's interesting, saying that, because I think that from a collective perspective of humanity on Earth at this particular point, it is very much about what you need to zone into as a collective energy, so that therefore you can actually allow the influence of that vibration to assist and guide you. And therefore, what I advise to people is be very, very conscious of what subliminally you're allowing yourself to be bombarded with. And I've talked to lots and lots of people who've decided, I'm not watching the news anymore, I'm not reading newspapers anymore, I'm not permitting myself to be affected by all that subliminal negative vibration and energy, and I'm basically creating silence for myself and peace for myself and harmony for myself. I'm making a decision, I'm making a choice, I'm turning my TV off, I'm going into what's natural now. Rather than watch the news, I just think I'll go and sit by the beach for a while, or I might walk up the park, or have a meditation, and so make those sorts of choices. Basically, you have a choice in what you're permitting yourself to be bombarded with. Again,
like whatever you went through, just thank that aspect of you for choosing that experience in life. And yeah. Hello, Blair.
Hello. How you doing? How was your Tabash hour? Sorry, I'm a bit watery here.
It was fantastic. Tabash is great. He's just a hoot, absolute hoot. Just wonderful. And I just want to say to you all that Blair offers, personal sessions that you can do like this on the internet. If you want to have a session and find out more about who you are and your past lives.
Yep. So just go to my website, tabash.com. It gives you all the information that's there. So currently, I think bookings are mid-April. So.
Yeah, okay, you're a busy guy, and you've got a new website which is looking spiffing. It's looking wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been awesome.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just amazing to just connect up with like-minded people, and just makes me aware of the big cosmic family we're all aligned to.
I know, isn't it great? How many countries we've got? 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 countries online at the moment.
Bye for now.
Bye for now. Big love to you all.
Thank you, brother.
See you soon.